but I've got an urban legend to tell y'all. It's an old ghost story that's my family has been passing down for generations now. I just called it an urban legend, but it's totally a true story. Nothing can be verified, and definitely that's what makes it a legend. But there are some clues, and that's all I'm going to say about the location. We don't know exactly what year, but it was sometime during the 1880s and maybe late 70s. Anyway, the locale of this little tale is in a small valley town. I wouldn't say more than about 20 to 25 people lived there at the time. I have not been able to verify this town's existence, but honestly I can't imagine how many lost Valentines there were away out west in the early days, but according to legend this town was buried on purpose. It starts in the night of a meteor shower. Not back then. They really didn't know what they were, since they didn't have the news or the Weather Play channel on, but apparently it was going on long enough that two guys, they were named Smokey and Billy, and went up on the roof of the general store to keep watching it after everybody else had gotten bored, interrupt their wondering how far away the shooting stars are. When they see one that was apparently so close that and they could visibly see it in the sky above them, as in they can make out the outline and see the tail and everything. Okay, they even witnessed a crash into the mountains with a huge explosion. It must have been a very small meteorite, since it didn't cause any massive shockwaves or leave any lasting impact, and that the general populace knows about. Anyway, the explosion boom brought the whole town outside. It was your typical western town, one main road with various buildings and so on, and everybody is out on the road with their torches talking about what happened. Who had seen it? And is it God Almighty himself coming down from heaven? Smoking Billy tell everybody what they saw, and that one of the shooting stars, made of, crashed or otherwise landed in the nearby mountains. It looked like it landed on a well known to the mountain, like up near a small peak, but now these mountains are miles away. It would take about a half day on horseback to get to the, but that is exactly what they decide on doing. Smoking Billy, joined by their friends and Jack and Angela, and the sheriff was going to. He was a real hard no shirt by how the story has been told. No nonsense, as straight as an arrow, and probably had an awesome mustache. So all these guys are excited about their little adventure. When the town die-cast, going almost ruined everything. Doc was obviously the smartest guy in town, and if you can picture a Doc from any Western Shore movie that you've ever seen who seems to know everything, is this guy. Anyway, he tells them that they need to be careful because this thing came from space and it could have some kind of harmful effects on humans, like toxic space fumes or spores or something. He also mentioned that it was down for that. They would even find the actual crash. It might look like it landed on the peak, but it could be much higher and inaccessible. The group doesn't pay any attention, and Smokey says that they'll bring back a piece of the shrapnel. So the next day they gather their crap and they head out, and they're all armed, of course, and they're cowboys after all, and besides this was Indian country anyway. These horse rail at the trailhead, and then someone made at some point in time where I got treacherous for horses. The trailer got steep, but this particular area was pretty heavily what it is. Well, so, even if the trail wasn't as deep as it was, and there is no way the horses could have made it through the woods. Since they didn't want to leave their horses here alone for too long, and they decided to camp here for the night, they set up. I think it was him. Apparently looked up at one point, he noticed the trees were getting ordering. The sun seemed to be getting brighter. Hey, you guys, look up and look at some of these trees. The goddamned off. This gets the guys all excited, and they stop and look up to take it in. Jack especially is I'll get you about how close they must be getting. Angela is the farthest back and apparently calls out whoever gets there first find a good rock to take back to the dock. And that son of a bitch. and there is a medium to large size lake completely surrounded by the mountains and trees. There was only the one trail that led to this lake in the mountains, and they would probably be some kind of a resort there nowadays if it was still accessible anyway. The meteor had indeed crashed exactly where they thought, right in the middle of this resort. Each one of the guys stops dead in their tracks upon entering the clearing and seeing the destruction. They all mumble some kind of surprised expression, Jesus H. Christ driving a horse-drawn buggy, Smoky Mountains. I guess we won't be coming back here anymore from the impact. I mean, this place was trashed, completely, destroyed, and the lake itself is finished, as one of the guys apparently stated. The repeats of rock. Everywhere there's trees destroyed and tipped over. They were broken trees still smoking from small fires that put themselves out. But what was the most interesting is what was in the lake itself. From what they recount, there is this large piece of metal sticking out of the lake, with a couple of smaller pieces near the top sticking out on either side. A couple guys started moving closer to the lake, and the sheriff got all mad and saved the oriented. Everyone be careful. Now, God damn it. The sheriff says, watch out for sharp rocks, don't pick up anything with shape. Too much rice can be sharp is nice. They moved up to the shoreline, and everybody knows this is this large thing sticking out of the water. Someone will say asked what it could be, and they don't know that. It's. Return to the lake where he is pointing, and sure enough, the metal shaft was connected to an even larger object deep underneath. It was too deep, though, and the water was murky from all the dirt and rubble the crash and caused, and they can make. I was a silhouette was way too curious about that. He was like, well, let's swim down there, I bet we can get a better look before we have to come up for air. There's a couple of agreement, and a couple of the guys started losing some of their clothes, like they're going to dive in. The sheriff gets all pissed again, and it's a good thing he was there, though. Now wait just a goddamn minute. He paused and he surveyed the water. Nobody go on the water. Look at all these fish that are belly up. Nobody had notice. With all the excitement of the destruction and the mysterious metal shaft, there was dead fish floating in the water. A lot of them mostly concentrated near the shaft. Jack is surprised. What in the hell? While everybody is focused in the fish, he notices that the water is messed up too. Look at the water. It's like something's in it. They all look a little closer, and, sure enough, the water looks weird. There is like a discoloration to it, and all the excitement. They had to notice it even though they were just looking in the water trying to see what was down there. Now, with the advent of technology, the description of water is changed a little bit. I think the easiest way for me to describe how it looked, as if you think about water and oil mixing, you kind of get like a rainbow hue, only this wasn't as strong, and they're all kind of farting around on the shore. When Billy sees a turtle in the sand a few feet away crawling around or the short line, look at the turtle, it's alive. You bend down to pick it up. It was a smaller turtle, about the size of a softball. Don't touch it, the sheriff says roughly. It's too late. Though Billy picks it up and finds it has a coating of whatever is in the water. Smokey gets all pissed off this time. God damn it. Now look at you got that shit. All of your hands. Run his fingers over the thin substance. Apparently it had a silvery hue to it out of the water, and he describes the feeling of the other guys, saying that it feels slippery, it doesn't burn or hurt at all. And Julie doesn't like this either. And he yells at Billy too, don't touch your goddamn mouth. In fact, just put the turtle down and wipe your hands. Doc says, don't touch your eyes or mouth if you get that shit on your hands until you wash it off. Does anybody got any blasted soap? Smokey says he does, but didn't have time to get it out of the bag. Billy yells out suddenly and probably scaring the evolving crap out of everybody. Wow, this son of a gun in the part of his hand between his thumb and index finger, the software that some people call it. Concerned and annoyed, Angela says, I don't know why you picked it up. There's snappers in these parts. You know. Smokey disagrees, and that ain't no snapper. That's way too small by this point. And Billy had thrown the turtle down in the sand. Gosh, it drew blood. He says it's showing his hand to everybody now. Personally, I was always skeptical of the turtle by parts and is. It was on its back riding around in the plan for a few seconds before I corrected itself. It didn't look like a normal turtle anymore. Apparently the look of the turtle is changed over the years and depending on who's telling the story, but either way I guess it's normal. Green and brown hues were gone. It was like a grayish color on Milestone and ugly looking gray. Smokey makes a conjecture about the way the turtle likes. It looks like it's dead. Billy gets all upset. Well, it's obviously not. He holds up his hand again. He wasn't bleeding, so bad to speak, but there is enough to see that the turtle had got him good. Angela gets all bent up and out of shape about cleaning the wound again and saying we've got to get that stuff washed off quick and get water from a canteen and get that soap over here. And they patched Billy up in Spanish trees and tried to get a look at whatever was in the water from every possible angle without getting too close. More turtles were popping up on the beach and the guys were kicking them back again. Also, a few waterfalls or birds of some kind of falling over the area and made their way towards the water but none of them had landed at it. I guess they stopped dead in their tracks a couple feet above the water, flapped their wings and then we're not going to make it home. Let's get back to the horses and they start down. They actually did make pretty good time at first, but then Billy starts to lack of. Eventually he stops over to catches Smokey asks if he's okay. Billy shakes his head saying I don't know, I forgot where I was going for a second there and now I can't catch my breath. Yeah, you can probably guess what. This isn't it anyway. On accountability. And they didn't make great time back to the horses and almost took double what it should have going down the hill. So go back to the horses and Anjali says, Billy, looks like hell, that turtle. It had to have some kind of disease and now Bailey's infected. And you still thinks they should make a run for home that night? And we're not going to make it down these wooded hills in the dark. The sheriff reiterates, and if we did, we need to cross the plains home. We'd never see an Indian attack coming up for out there. Jack and Smoke, you both agreed. So they set up on his face and like somebody had dumped a bucket of water on him. He ain't going to last a day night, Angela point, baked with the hot dog out of that belly. I'm telling you we should have tried to get him home. There were mumbling and murmurs from the rest of the guys on what they should have done at this point. Really kind of stands up and steps away from the fire and then lays himself in the ground. Apparently it looks like he just fell, but he laid out his blanket on the ground like he was going to bed, so nobody really knew what to think. Night, Smokey says, without turning away from the fire. The guys stay by the fire buds. After only a few minutes Billy starts moving on the ground. He rows back and forth for a few seconds and then, Jesus H, Smokey Yellow is throwing a sausage down and the rest of the guys all huddled around Billy. None of them even knew what a seizure was, so they didn't know what to do. He's going to hit his head and, for your information, never tried to hold on to prevent movement from somebody seizing. But, like I said, they didn't know what was going on. After what seemed like an hour but it was only a couple of minutes probably let all the air out of his lungs and then he, Billy and Julie, slaps his face. Jesus Christ, Smokey says he's stone cold. You was holding Billy's not been handed. After a minute or two of trying to wake Billy up, the sheriff speaks up. He's dead. Nobody can believe that. He didn't look good. Jackson, the sheriff lets out alongside, all right, listen up. He was fine this morning and that turtle bit and now he's dead at. Nobody touches the body. If you did, wash your hands right now and wrap them up in a blanket and slide them away from where we'll be sleeping. We need to get his body to the doc for an autopsy. They cleaned up dinner before messing with Billy's body and they found a nice spot under a tree away from the camp. I guess it was God roll savage like fairly. Then another. I guess Smokey and the sheriff stopped talking as soon as I heard the growling and they kind of stood there looking at each other without saying anything for a couple of seconds after the second growl and they slowly continued turning around to find Billy said enough and they're kind of just standing there looking bathroom, not sure what to think, for a few seconds. And before, Sheriff, what time does hand up? Otherwise Billy might have gotten his neck straight away. Jesus Christ, you guys. Smokey is yelling as he tries to get Billy off the sheriff by hitting his head with his hand, and Jack and Angela come rushing over. Christ is yellow from the area. They're on their way down the trail. The guys gather by the fire to catch the breath. When Billy turns around and starts running back at them, there's a sudden boom that most likely causes all three men to grab their pants. Billy stops. The boom continues. In the last one puts Billy on his back. Sheriff comes walking out of the shadows with a gun drawn in front of him. Sheriff reloads, as the other guys got the wrong guns out of their sleeping bags. He dead, jackass. Of course he's dead. And Angela returns. Yeah, well, we thought that before. Jack reiterates, just as everybody calms down, Billy starts to move again. That's impossible, Smokey said. Is Billy stands up, hit him again. The sheriff of hollers, they all blast him again. He walks over to Billy and just stands over him for a few seconds and, sure enough, and Billy sits up again in the sheriff, blows his head office. Everybody is quiet for what feels like a year. That did it? Smokey says. Finally, they all gather around Billy's body. Duck isn't going to believe this. Jack says, play store. And once you get to look at the body and there should not be any doubt, if anything, the odd jobs show something that Billy said. Smokey is looking grim once he realizes something he said. I'm not saying we need to shoot anybody, but I already thought of that, and he was standing over the fire now running his hand over. He should wake you all up and I won't be able to bite anybody. I don't think I'll be able to sleep tonight. Smokey says you have to get some. The sheriff says we have to be gone. So the guys back up again in a sleeping bag. I'm away from the camp. Angela lets out alongside. We're going to have to drag his ass all the way back home, and that's why we have to leave as soon as the sun starts rising. The sheriff says as he sits down next to his tree. It was a smaller tree, small enough to wrap rope around sheriff's office, and you're on the tree trunk a couple of times, and not at all. Smokey asks, if it's two, it's just tight enough. If things go bad. The sheriff doesn't want himself to be able to wiggle free. Everybody says their good nights and they try to fall asleep inside to say if anybody actually got too much sleep. But Smokey is up first. He jokes awake nervously and finds the sun is on his way up. The clouds have cleared out, so you wakes, everybody outside. Hell. You look like you still have some color. Maybe I didn't transfer from Billy and Jack offers. The sheriff tell him they don't have time to figure it out now, and that's the doc's job. So they gather the crap up and then head down to the trailer behind them tied up in a sleeping bag. They had a stroke of luck here, something they needed. Dragging Billy downhill made it easier. But when they get down the now they find Sheriff's horse just hanging out a couple 100 feet out on the prairie and drinking from a small ditch, and he whistles and it comes running and they drive Billy over him and they head home as fast as they can and then get there, and late afternoon when they get back, after a couple people here and there, some shop owners standing on front of their place enjoying the weather, etc. The general store owner comes running up to them and he's like, "Where the hell is Billy? He's dead." The sheriff returns quickly. "We need to get to the dock right now." But now more people are popping out wherever they were hiding it, and they get up to the dock's place with the training people in jail. I'm wondering what the hell is going on and not getting any answers. Was it Indians? Was an animal? Did he shoot himself on accident? Is the commotion, and comes outside as they approach, and he's looking at the horse and no one for, well, there's a dead body in the sleeping bag, and then he sees the sheriff's advantage of a bloody red hand inside. Dog starts in them as they put their sleeping bag up on the exam table. "I told you it was a bad idea to go up there. What happened?" He starts on the sleeping bag. "The sheriff stops on my hold on before you look. You need to hear what happened first." So they tell him the whole thing. Of course he doesn't believe that now. "I told you that could be a couple of toxins out there. Some kind of space dust you inhaled. To start a murder investigation?" Smokey says, "Here you go. You have to open the sleeping bag and, darker than tired dog, jolt in and jump back." After a few seconds of staring he starts getting closer again, and he looks like Swiss cheese, doesn't he? "Angela. He bit the hell out of my hand. Damn near me. That kind of snaps out of a strands, okay. So a turtle bit on it, and by night he was this. Yep, the sheriff says there was something in that water. The turtle was covered in it. I'm going to need that turtle to find out if it was carrying some kind of infection." "In the dark," says Doc, and sheriff start playing the whole "who has more authority" card in it. Nobody's going back up there. The sheriff says it's too dangerous. Whatever that turtle had, it's safe to say Billy did too, and Dog is staring at Billy again. It's like he's been dead for weeks. This happened overnight. Knock knock joke. "I've got some antibiotics to start you on. Not sure if they'll help enough." Rest of the guys, murmur, quietly, "Huh. I thought it looked worse yesterday." Smokey potters, "Why doesn't he look sick? Jackass." Dog goes into a long shield. "That could be several reasons. I said the antibiotic may not help because sounds like whatever was transferred to Billy is probably viral. A couple things can happen when it comes to any disease, bacterial or viral. 99% of people will get infected, get sick and show signs and be contagious and fall prey to whatever the disease causes, up to death, depending what it is. The other 1% could be 3 different things. First, you could straight up be immune to the disease. For whatever reason it's not able to overcome your immune system. You won't show signs and you won't be sick and you won't be contagious. I hope he's immune." Angelina doesn't miss a beat. "The second thing is you could be a carrier. That means you're infected but you don't feel sick and you don't feel sometimes you're still contagious. However, how will we know if he's immune or carrying the smoky ass? I'll have to do some blood. I'll probably have to run cultures, which takes time." "What's the third thing that can happen?" The sheriffs. "Well, we don't have to worry about that one, since you would already be showing. But the last thing that can happen is the pathogen completely mutates your DNA once it enters your body. Within hours, your body could start changing physically, muscle tissue overgrowth, skeletal growth, or shrinkage, severe decreases the list of physical changes could be. Unless so until we know, I need to act like I'm the carrier. The sheriff says that's correct. In the dark returns, don't be using the public outhouse, only prepare your own food and keep that. Says that he needs to go home and stay there and play the dog's playlist as he gets ready to do the autopsy on Billy. Doc only has one nurse with him. She was more like an assistant than an actual nurse. Make love up and get their table ready. It's at this point that the shit really starts, and, honestly, it was a complete accident at this point, docking the nurse to remove Billy's teeth for dental records while he examines what's left of his brain. Darkness is suspicion that whatever made Doc was also interested in the brain, because that was what eventually stopped Billy for good when he was shot there. Okay, the dark starts. So his brain appears to be covered in a foreign substance of some kind. Most of the blood is coagulated and dried, but this appears to be more moist. I can verify that it's silver. And so this next part is what screws everything up. The doc is poking around the brain and he must have hit a nerve of some kind. Whatever he hits causes Billy's jaw to close hard really quick. And you remember what the nurse is doing. She's trying to pry his teeth out. Despite being dead, Billy manages to bite the nurse, his finger, hard. She lets out to cry. The nurse says that she's going to just go wash her hand really quick to be safe and sound. And the letter she comes back with a band-aid on her finger. Doc doesn't notice. The doc moves onto the torso and cuts Billy open. There is silvery stuff everywhere. It was definitely in his bloodstream. I think I might be able to isolate the sample, and they wrap up what they're doing. After a couple of hours on, the nurse goes home. Well, the doctor. So everybody will be hitting the sack shortly enough. The doc is up all night, though more on that later. And that was also the last night and that time's existence. The angry Jack and Smoke. You had gone out looking for the horses after leaving the accident, but they didn't have any luck. They decided to shack up in a small hide a couple miles outside of town. It was getting late and the person who had owned that house had died a couple of months prior. Anyway, a lot of people are already up and walking around. Smokey thinks that this is strange saying, and I thought we were up early. Seems like the whole town is already up and at them. And they get to town in. The sun is up, but it was just dark enough that they didn't notice what was going on. Jack sees a guy that he recognizes and calls out, "Hey, Mac." Mac stops and turns around, and the three guys all stop at dead in their tracks. Half of Mac's face is gone and all that's left is half muscle tissue and half of it straight down to the bone, and the rest of his body is a much better. He starts shambling towards the guys, not a full-scale friend, but not exactly slow either. It's Bread. Smokey calls out. Nobody else has time to call out. Smoking an angry retriever Jack stands his ground and shoots back his head angry, yells at Michaels down with a boom. Everybody else on the street turns their attention to the guys and started shambling towards them somewhere, missing all the sorts of land, from fingers to hands to arms. Most were missing large chunks flesh. Apparently, one in particular had no flesh at all on their head, and it was just a skeleton head on a decayed body. The whole town. Smoky house. Leo shoot off a couple of rounds before realizing that the whole time is gone. Now they don't know anything about what had happened during the autopsy, but remember the nurse. She went off somewhere and died during the night. The bad news was that she was living in the town and disappeared somewhere else. What do we do? I don't know. Don't make any noise, just shut the hell up. Smokey says it was too late, though a couple of zombies were already heading towards this alone and they hear a couple of gunshots. Where is Angelina? The zombie falls back while Smoking reacts and backs up against the banister, and they tumbled down to the bottom of the stairs. It's a grisly sight, and the zombie starts eating right away. He had said a couple of times and he tries to get a shot off and nobody. This time a bunch more time is it burst through the saloon swing and double door, and they started at it too. Smokey gets upstairs and he realizes that he's cornered. So we wondering what the hell he was going to do. It sounds like the zombies do. They seem to just be shambling around. It's like they forgot that he was there smoking marbly things to himself. Angela isn't going to look too good when he rides his back up Smokey, heading like an eternity when your footsteps coming from the doorway, and it was definitely hoops, and he pops up and he sees the sheriff right in this whole damn horse into the saloon, a bunch of zombies behind him. He's got a shot, and I mean, what's the two zombies nearest to him? They were close enough together to get them both, and their heads basically explode. And he gets a second shot. He blasts off and he throws the whole god of the nearby zombie. It was a double barrel song. You only had 2 shots anyway. This catches everybody else's attention, but he already has his pistol out. He gets maybe 3 or more before the hard behind him catches up his horse, freaks out and bugs in the floor, and do some tables away from the zombie, please. It's kind of sad he's able to escape because they get his horse out the back. Sheriff yells at Smokey and they scurry out of the back door. What happened, Smokey House? I don't know. I came into town to see the doc and I found everybody was like Billy. Doc's got his place locked up tonight, the curtains drawn and everything. We need to find Jack. The Smokey says he's on his own. Sheriff says we need help and we need it now. Smokey says, Sheriff quickly explains the help you wants to get us from the friendly Indians nearby a couple miles southeast. Which tribe was is changed over the years, but most people seem to think that it was the Paiute. Smokey agrees that they need the help. So they sneak down to the south end of town. Sheriff leads him down to the dock, horse tied up with it to a horse rail. There's a bag laying on the ground with a rope tied around. It's connected to the saddle. The bag clearly has a body in it. I found a screwing around on my property this morning. I brought it in and I tied Jones. I want to show those Indians exactly what we're up against. The sheriff explained. Once they're in the clear, Smokey asks, you really think that they'll help us? I've actually talked to him quite a few times. The sheriff says there is spiritual people. They have rich folklore, the way they talk about their ancestry, and I bet they have some kind of story dealing with the dead. If anything, I'm sure they have some words I can spray you. They ran out a couple miles until they come across to scouting party the villages. A short ways past them it seems like one of the Indians recognized Sheriff Yu, waves at him in the Indian motions with his hand to his buddies and starts riding out to meet them. Sheriff talks to his friend, who comes to be known as Buffalo, about what is going on. He doesn't show Buffalo what's in his bag, but he agrees to take them to the chief, and now we call play some Buffalo because his name was something Indian, sounding like rides with buffalo or rhymes with bison or something, but apparently smoke. He called him Buffalo/horse on accident at some point because he forgot his name, and plus buffalo horse is a lot easier to write than rides with buffalo. So there you go. Anyway, they get to the chief's and sheriff's buffalo horse comes out and says, the chief will see that I'll sit in the ground. The chief says something in their native language, why have you coming? What do you bring with you? And the person next to the chief transit. We've got ourselves a little problem, sheriff begins. The guy translates, the dead have come back to life and we need your help stopping it. The translated looks surprised but almost to reluctantly translate. The chief appears to ponder the statement while giving Sheriff of a steely gaze. Look here. Sheriff says, unveiling Jones. Jones raises his head and snarls, and he wasn't actually Daddy. The console and everybody else in the TV jump to their feet in surprise. I thought you said it was dead. Smokey whispers to Sheriff, happen, I lied. Sheriff whispers back, and we've got a town full of these. Sheriff says the council all deliberate. It seems like they might be telling the chief to tell Sheriff it to go, screw themselves. The chiefs and the translator translates, you will take Buffalo Horse and Fish River with you, and they will help you kill them and make sure none are left. And of course his name is in Fish River. He was the top fisherman in the tribe, so his name is related to that. I wanted to say it was swims with fish or runs with the river, but either way I don't know for sure. And once again, Fish River is a lot easier to write out. I have no buddies offended by these nicknames. So Buffalo Horse, Fish River leave together the weapons. The chief says something to Sheriff and Smoking in English as they're leaving the Times, beware the bite of the dead man. Thank you, Sheriff says, not just for that tidbit of information but for their help as a whole lot. Do you wear the bike? Was the first damn thing that we learned. Smokey says outside, you see that one guy went straight for the head. Buffalo Horse and Fish River ride over all right now, Sheriff says, looks like we've got a time to clean up the Indians. Then Smokey is for a horse in. The four of them ride back towards town, and they get about a mile from town when they started noticing some stragglers. There's a couple of times or just lost wandering the open land. Buffalo. At this point, a little past these two stragglers, they find out how to stand in the middle of nowhere, its entire side missing, but any animals that happen to eat along the way. They decide to split up into a wide circle around time to clean up anything they find, before moving into town proper. A lot of people's houses they decide to clear first too. Most of them were single story and only a room or two. Smokey and Fish River in Sheriff in Buffalo Horse, they start at the south and ride their way to the north side of town, and they find a couple stragglers that they put down, and Sheriff ends up finding his horse as well, have limping after some kind of desert road and to eat it, and it was probably nice for Sheriff to put him down for good in a morbid kind of way. After checking the outskirts of town and cleaning up a few stragglers, they're not give me ahead of time when they come up from the north side, and I immediately met with about 6 or 7 zombies right off the bat. Buffalo and Fish are quiet about it, but Smokey up and just blows somebody's head off, which obviously attracts everyone. They get off their horses and slap their ass and holler to get them to run off for the time being so that they don't get eaten. And then they said the nearest building. Smokey grabs the cavalry sword immediately inside the building, and there's 2 zombies standing at the main desk, which Fish probably slices one up while Smoking uses his new sword on the other. Might as well clear this building first. Sheriff says, check every room. They head upstairs and finds most of the rooms empty. The room at the end of the hallway has 2 zombies trying to get in it. They're just walking into the door. Is somebody out there? A voice calls from inside of the room. The guys, I'll look at each other. Yeah, Sheriff returns. Hey, is that Jack? Smokey asks excitedly. Yeah, I hear what sounds like Jack moving a bunch of stuff away from the door. The door opens a minute later to leave Jack like I've been in here for days. Hey, you brought some help, he says, referring to the Indians. There's no time to celebrate the zombies who notice the guys going to the internet now all shambling in through the entryway. Oh shit, Jack says, everybody downstairs. Sheriff orders and then get back to the staircase, which has a large open section of the floor below with the banister, and it's like a cafeteria with all the grounds down below are zombies that notice the guys are trying to climb the stairs. It's pretty gross. Hanging on the bones by a thread, bones completely showing, people clambering around dragging their entrance behind them. It's not a pretty picture. Light them up sheer size. He opens fire at this point. Most of the zombies know that they're here, so who cares about the noise? And plus, and they've created play decent choke point for themselves. Buffalo and Fish are using their balls all share of Smokey, and Jack start shooting at Buffalo's closest to the staircase, and he takes one or two down with his knife and his tomahawk that are able to climb the stairs. They waited a few moments after killing what seemed like the last one. Okay, it looks like that wave is over. We'll head to the saloon in the general store next to Share of Size. And so they head downstairs, carefully stepping over the rotted corpses, and meet outside. Burn the building, Fish sighs. It'll destroy their corpses in the sickness that they bring. Are we going to have to burn the whole town down? Smoke, he says. Sadly, we burn it all, Sheriff says. If he goes back into the end. He comes out with a little oil lantern, the whole world starting a fire. The nearby dead bodies go up almost immediately, and we burn this time to the ground and any bodies along with it. We'll find a new place to live, and we can head to Carson City and find something out. That way the general store was destroyed inside, and the rags toppled over and blood stains on the floor everywhere. But the only one in there was the shopkeeper. The saloon had about 3 or so zombies and answer. They were left over from Smokey and Sheriff's daring escape. Earlier they found a couple zombies outside, yet that they had to be dragged in to be burned with the buildings. Looks like Doc's place is about the only one left standing. Jack says he surveyed what was once their town. A couple of the larger buildings are still a place, while some of the smaller ones have gone out already. I get to Doc's place and they find the door locked and curtains still drawn. Doc, Smokey calls out. He finds a window with the curtain not pulled down and puts his face in the glass to try and look at it. I can't see shit in here. Where the hell is he at? Doc, Sheriff calls out loud. They force their way out of Doc's places, a 2-room building. The main area is where he sees patients, and then in the back there's a doorway to where his bedroom is at, and they have a look around, and unless Doc is in his bedroom he's nowhere to be found. Holy shit. Jack says he's standing next to Doctor. It looks like you win that belly, like you was a ham. Open them up damn near everywhere. Smokey says, and look at these poor things. Jack says. He motions to a cage in the table with a few dead mice in it. Those dead mice look like hell. I bet they were infected. How the hell would that happen if they're in the cage? The Smokey ponders. Sheriff trees the door. To do is better. No, he doesn't have much about me in here. The sheriff says, what the hell is he been doing? Jackass is reading a page. You isolated some samples of that silvery stuff in the water. It says here that it was all over Billy's inside. That came out of Josh Turner. Whatever this material is that is affected, the patient's body appears to be an organic in nature. As near as I can tell with all my medical training. It's a bodily fluid of some kind, though where it originated from I do not know. Looking at a sample under the microscope, it does not appear to be a pathogen at all, despite behaving like one transfers from by itself. Never seen or heard anything like it. I have to get up to that lake to see that water and that object the men spoke about. So we went to the mountain. Smokey asks. No, Sheriff says bluntly, with the compound. Several hours ago it died. Later I left for supper, and when I came back it was alive again, although now it was completely rabid and insane. I attempted to euthanize it by injecting poison and it had no effect. No, I did not expect it to. Only after using a scalpel to pierce the head and brain did the subject seize. Whatever this foreign substance is, it seems to concentrate in the brain of whatever creature. To facts there's more. The sheriff sighs. Entry 3 in another milestone. I waited for death to set in. I been injected a dose of the substance an hour after it died. 10 minutes later the mile started to move. Only this time, when I woke up, it was not insane, it appeared to be perfectly normal. I euthanized it and I did an autopsy. The substance had overrun the masses inside says before, but it had regenerated its blood flow and bodily activities, its organs heart, lungs, brain. It looks fully functional, no signs of decay or atrophy that would have occurred after death. If I can unlock the substance, this could be the greatest medical discovery in history, a possible end to its unimaginable. I must keep working and I do hope the sheriff is still alive. I may have squandered the perfect test subject. So he's in here performing experiments and jackass, does he know what the hell is going on out there? Sheriff turns the page he knew. He says it says right here you read another passage entry, for the town is gone. I hear the screams. It must be my nurse. I should have asked to see her finger. All I can do now is stay quiet and not attract any of their attention. I must unlock how the substance works. I had to repeat myself with, and it did not work, the same result in an undead. The regenerative property of the substance only seems to work on the brain when it fails, and it only restores function on the most primitive of levels. Why did they share from me number for his body appear to accept the substance? So then he is here. Smokey asked Docky. I was loudly, we got a problem. Sheriffs, we need to find him now in Buffalo says alright, take it down. Jack says walking towards Doc's bedrooms, a few feet from the door there's a few loud dot. What in the bloody hell was that smoke? Your ass is changed. Sheriff says that sure doesn't sound like those other smoky starts, he doesn't get to finish the sentence. A gigantic creature smashes through the door, taking most of the wall with it. It has to be nearly 7 feet tall and bulkier than a semi-truck. It's no more than mosquito bites to it. And now there's a couple of ways I can try to give you a mental picture of what this creature is supposed to look like. If you're familiar at all with the Left 4 Dead franchise, do you know what the tank is? If you don't know what that is, then you at least know who the Incredible Hulk is. Like I said, it's at least 7 feet tall. Its arms are twice as long as a man should be and they're bigger than tree trunks, and it's not going to be gone to the overgrowth of bone and muscle anyway. The creature rushes the center of the room and raises both arms to try and smash the guys. Sheriff, Buffalo, and Fish hightail it outside, but Smokey has to dive out of the way as the creature destroys the exam table and Billy's body. Each step the creature takes sounds like thunder on the wood floor. Now, when the creature raised its arm to smash, they went through the ceiling, which is probably what saves Monkey. The ceiling caved in and disoriented the creature. Give me Smokey time to rush behind it and get out of the door. Jesus Christ, what the hell is that? That's dark, Sheriff says. As they run back into the remains of town and can be, Smoking returns God, we burned everything to the ground and there's nowhere to hide, it's dark. Alright, the sheriff says, remember what he said. Make them grow bigger like that dark smash. How much is way out of his office, bringing down the rest of the building and started making his way towards the guys. He doesn't have super speed or anything, but he's much faster than the other zombies. Buffalo shoots an arrow attack and just bounces off any ideas. Smoke your ass, seemingly preparing for their death. Yeah, actually, the sheriff said. They headed west out of town towards the sheriff's house and they kept a brisk pace ahead of Doc until the sheriff's house is inside and Chair fronts into his barn, the rest of the guys, rushing behind them. What's the plan? The Fish asks. Sheriff pulls out a stick of dynamite from the barrel in the barn. I'm going to blow him sky high. I've got 2 horses in the back there. You guys get him ready. So the guys take the horses out of the back while Sheriff waits for Doc. Doc seems to pick up the pace a little, while Sheriff likes to dynamite. He drops a stick on the ground and hightails it out the back, and he catches up with the guys behind a couple of trees, and they cover their ears as the stick explodes, destroying the barn and hopefully die too. And they come out for me behind the trees to investigate. They see one of Doc's now massive arms sticking out from under. How much pile of rubble! And they got them all right in that blast, and they got him good. So everybody is standing there kind of relieved, and Doc's arms begin moving. "Oh shit, Smokey," says. Dog starts rustling even more as the rubble pile begins to move as well. "Anybody got anything else in mind?" "And the sheriff's office time to go fish," says. Doc is back at his feet by this time, and he seems to be regaining his bearings. They settle up to her horse and start riding horses. We get to the mine. There's all kinds of TNT still in there smoking. We bring the mountain dog good, thinking the sheriff collars back, and they ride to the old mine, making sure that Dog stays behind them. I'm not sure if the blast pissed off or if he was used to his new body now. But he's running full scale. If they hadn't been on horses, they would have been overtaken. They pick up the pace as the old man comes into view. I guess the question is, Smokey again, how do we get them in there and keep them in there long enough to blow the TNT and have all of us get out safely? We don't. The sheriff says coldly, we lead him in there, you guys get out the side tunnel. I stay until the mine. Sheriff, the sickness, remember what got it? All has to go, but you could be immune, Smokey says. Dog never ran the tests. We don't know if I'm immune or a carrier. If I'm a carrier, I can still transmit it, even an accident. As long as I'm alive, this thing still exists. Smoke, you try to argue some more about it. Sheriff wouldn't have it. They all gather at the mine entrance as Dog comes barreling. He picks up the pace when he sees them, and he lets out a deafening roar. Smokey and the other guys run ahead and get the TNT ready. Yet they make a huge pile, then place a couple bundles strategically around all the exits, and they lead the fuses back to the center of the room where his sheriff will be able to quickly light them all. You guys head on out. The sheriff's coming from the tunnels of. You guys need to make that mountain trail impassable, whatever way you can make it, so people can't ever get up there again and then quickly say their tearful goodbyes. And I'll ask, on the second tunnel, they're just about back outside when there's an air conditioning explosion. What knocks him to the ground, smoking Terrence, and sees the mines coming down on itself. Buffalo helps him to his feet, and they get further from the entrance and clear off the dust. Did they check the main entrance as well as the last side tunnel to make sure that the mine is sealed off completely, Sheriff, or brought down the thousands of tons of rock down on himself and Doc? There is no way the Docs survived that one. The next day, in over the next few weeks, smoky buffalo and fish sauce. They made the mountain trail and possible. They enlisted the help of a few others to get it done, throwing them on the trail too, and to digging up the thorniest weeds and bushes that could find and replanting them on the trail. By just the next summer it had become so overgrown that you would never know a trail I'd ever been there. Smokey planted a large tombstone right at the head where the trail started, engraved with nothing but a skull and crossbones, and I guess that's the end of it. The small zombie outbreak was defeated, and it appears they were successful. Almost 15 years later, and no sign of any zombies out there. No, you're probably wondering about the evidence I mentioned right off the bat. How about what's true about this story? There's a couple of things that support this event to actually happening. First, according to family research, we think Smokey is my great-great-great-grandfather. My granddad did in fact go by the nickname Smoking, but we aren't able to identify if he's actually the Smokey from the story. And the second piece of evidence is the Doc's journal Smoky Captain. It was still around as late as 1979 when it was lost in the house fire. My dad claims to have read some of it when he was a kid back in the 50s, and there was some passages about undead. The thing is, if vitamin lost in the fire, it would be pretty much illegible today as it had deteriorated badly by that point. Thirdly, I have seen the skull and crossbones tombstone with my own eyes. It's very warm and deteriorated, but it's still there. It's a solid 8-mile hike from the nearest campground one way, and then trailer isn't easy, but everybody in my family goes to see it at least once in their life. I want to the woods play a little bit beyond. At 10 there's simply no going anywhere up there. It's too thick. The trash in the place in 150 years of unbridled overgrowth sure did the track, and it's probably good for all. We know that lake is still infected and those zombified turtles are still around in the sand up there,